Everyone knows we didn't start the fire and hunger for success that's about to engulf you right now. You started it the second you clicked on this video. But do you know that's also the name of a track that became a global hit of the 90s era? Do you know that the owner of that hit, Billy Joel himself, kind of hates it till date? You've probably heard the music somewhere, in school, on the radio, maybe in a meme or a commercial. We Didn't Start the Fire is a wall of words, a sprint through history, packed into 3 minutes of fast talking and catchy rhythm. It was a #1 hit, won awards, and became a pop culture moment. Yet Billy never saw it as something to be proud of. So how did a song that defined a generation leave its own creator feeling so burned? That's the fire we're here to talk about. In 1989, Billy Joel turned 40. That might not sound like a big deal now, but at the time he felt it in his bones. The American singer wasn't the young piano man anymore. He was starting to feel like yesterday's news, hair thinning a little, the charts shifting around him, and a new generation of music listeners who didn't grow up with his records were beginning to take over. You could say he was still successful, but the shine had dulled a bit. He wasn't cool in the eyes of the kids anymore, and that stung more than he ever expected. One day, Billy was having a casual conversation with a young guy, probably a teenager or someone in their early 20s. They were just talking, joking around when the kid said something that made Billy freeze. Almost like a joke, the kid said, "You know, nothing really happened in your generation." Now, to some people, that would have just been an eye-roll moment. But not for Billy Joel. Because that comment stuck with him like Top Bond. It hit him like a slap in the face, not because it was cruel, but because it was ignorant. Here was this kid, too young to remember anything before MTV, acting like the decades before were just a blur, like history hadn't happened, like the world had just started spinning when he was born. So, Billy Joel did what most artists do when they're irritated. He went to the piano. Only this time, he wasn't about to write a love song or a ballad. He didn't even write a melody he liked. What he wrote was more like a list, a fast, breathless, jam-packed timeline of everything that had happened since the year he was born, which was 1949. One historical event after another. No explanation, no analysis. Just names, dates, disasters, breakthroughs, and headlines stacked on top of each other like dominoes. 40 years of chaos, all crammed into one 3-minute song. And guess what? The song was called We Didn't Start the Fire. But here's the thing. Billy Joel didn't love it. He really didn't. He later revealed he thought the melody was terrible, like a dentist drill. That's how he described one of his own most famous songs. He thought it was repetitive, kind of annoying, and not at all musically exciting. He didn't write it to be catchy or lyrical, he just wanted to prove a point. And yet, like a lot of things in life, the song took on a life of its own. It got picked up fast. Radio stations loved it. Teachers started using it in classrooms, and people were easily drawn to the rapid-fire lyrics, partly because it was fun to sing, but also because it felt like a strange kind of history lesson wrapped in pop music. It was like a crash course in post-war America, set to a drum machine and a keyboard. Billy had created something he didn't even fully understand. One comment from a kid had triggered a reaction that turned into a hit song. It was never supposed to be a movement, or a cultural reference, or a viral hit before the internet even existed. But that's exactly what it became. It's like he created a monster and didn't realize it until it grew legs, walked out the door and started doing interviews without him. So, while the world was memorizing the lyrics and shouting them out loud like an anthem, Billy Joel stood off to the side, watching this thing he made without joy nor pride, only a strange kind of confusion, maybe even regret. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't the song he wanted to be remembered by. When We Didn't Start the Fire hit the airwaves in late 1989, it did what no one, not even Billy Joel himself, expected. It took off like a rocket. The song went straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was everywhere. People who didn't even follow Billy Joel's music were quoting it. Radio DJs couldn't play it enough. News anchors referenced it. It got parodied, analyzed, and passed around like a cheat sheet for 20th century history. And before Billy even had time to take a breath, it had become a cultural phenomenon. But here's the funny thing about success. Sometimes it walks in wearing a disguise. At first, it looks like a celebration, crowds cheering, charts rising, everyone talking about you. But when you look a little closer, you realize it's something else entirely. And for Billy, it started to feel less like recognition, and more like being handed someone else's coat and told to wear it. Teachers began using the song in classrooms, which on paper sounds like a compliment. After all, how many rock songs end up on school syllabi? But to Billy, it felt like the song was being turned into a tool, not a piece of art. Kids were being asked to memorize it. Teachers were building lesson plans around it. People weren't just listening to the music. They were scanning the lyrics like a list of trivia facts. It was like being told your heartfelt painting was great wallpaper for a study guide. And then came the misunderstandings. A lot of people assumed the song was political, some kind of generational manifesto, with Billy Joel shouting out what he believed in and what he stood against. But that wasn't the point at all. The lyrics weren't about taking sides. They were about showing the chaos, the sheer number of things that had happened in one man's lifetime. No deep message nor moral, just a fire hose of headlines. But try telling that to people once they've already made up their minds. Before long, Billy found himself boxed in. Fans, especially younger ones, started seeing him as the guy who wrote that history song, not Piano Man or Vienna, or the man who wrote aching ballads, jazz-influenced reflections, and love songs soaked in poetry and self-doubt. He was now the guy who rattled off historical events in alphabetical order over a synth beat. And that's where it started to sting. Because when people only remember your most convenient song, they forget the ones that actually cost you something. Scenes from an Italian restaurant was layered and cinematic. Summer, Highland Falls was raw and lyrical. Goodnight Saigon was deeply emotional and painfully real. But We Didn't Start the Fire? That was a song he wrote out of frustration, a list made to prove a point, and somehow it's the one that stuck to him like glue. That kind of fame is tricky. It's like being known for a catchphrase you never meant to say. Sure, people are cheering, but inside you're wondering why they skipped your best work just to latch onto something that was never supposed to define you in the first place. It's the classic case of a hit that belongs more to the audience than the artist. The crowd kept singing it, quoting it, loving it. But for Billy, the success felt distant, like watching someone else accept an award with your name on it. There's a certain kind of weight that comes with being known for something you didn't mean to be remembered by. It's not heavy like grief or guilt. It's more like carrying around a jacket someone threw over your shoulders at a party, one you didn't ask for, don't particularly like, and can't seem to take off. That's what We Didn't Start the Fire became for Billy Joel. He even compared it once to writing a term paper. You get the idea down, build out the structure, make it neat and tight, and then you hand it in. Job done. But here's the thing about term papers. No one ever wants to read them again. And yet, people kept reading his over and over, singing it, playing it, and basically treating it like a time capsule and a classic. Meanwhile, Billy Joel stood on stage night after night, playing a song that felt more like an assignment than an anthem. At concerts, you can hear it in the crowd. That familiar chant, "Start the fire, play the fire." They shout it like it's a party trick, like it's the greatest thing he's ever written. And every time he smiles and plays along because he knows what they're there for. But if you watch closely, you can see it on his face. That's the look of someone whose proud people showed up, but a little heartbroken about why. Imagine being known for your least favorite outfit, or that one joke you made years ago that people still quote back to you, even though you don't find it funny anymore. That's what this song became, a nickname that stuck, even though it never really fit. And deep down, Joel didn't want to be the history guy or the human headline reader. He wanted to be the storyteller, the piano man, the songwriter who wrote about love, loss, growing older, and all the quiet stuff people feel but don't always say out loud. Vienna, honesty, just the way you are. Those were the songs that came from his gut. They had soul. But We Didn't Start the Fire? That came from his brain. Was it a smart idea? Sure. Did he feel connected to it? Hardly. If you really want to understand why We Didn't Start the Fire never sat right with Billy Joel, you have to look at it side by side with the songs that did. Take Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, for example. It's over 7 minutes long. It tells the whole story of a relationship, from young love to grown-up resentment. It's theatrical, layered, shifting moods and tempos like a play unfolding right in front of you. It's not a song you write because you want to hit, it's a song you write because you've lived through it. Or Summer Highland Falls, which is one of his most emotionally vulnerable tracks. That's the one where he sings about depression, inner turmoil, and the uneasy feeling of being stuck between extremes. It's honest in a way that most pop songs never dare to be. He once said that song was the closest he'd ever come to writing a mental health anthem, even though nobody called it that back then. And then there's Vienna, a soft, almost lullaby-like message to himself and to anyone feeling the pressure to rush through life. "Slow down, you crazy child," he sings. It's not trying to impress you, it's just trying to comfort you. Now compare all of that to We Didn't Start the Fire, a song he openly described as a bunch of headlines, not poetry, not art. There's no personal emotion in it. There's no reflection. It's just a wall of sound and syllables, names, and dates. It's impressive in its scope, sure, but it's missing the very thing that made Billy Joel such a powerful songwriter in the first place: heart. And that's the rub. Joel's regret about the song was never really about the charts. It wasn't about fame or radio play or sales. It was about identity, about being seen for something that didn't represent him, not deeply, not creatively, not spiritually. He didn't mind that the song got big. He minded that it got bigger than the parts of himself he cared most about. And that's something a lot of people can relate to, even outside of music. Being praised for something that doesn't reflect who you are. It's a quiet kind of loneliness. You smile, you say thank you, you go along with it. But part of you knows this isn't the whole picture. For all his mixed feelings, all the eye rolls and awkward interviews, one thing is undeniable. We Didn't Start the Fire is still very much alive. Because decades after it first hit the charts, the song keeps finding new life in places Billy Joel probably never imagined. It's been covered by bands like Fall Out Boy, sampled and parodied online, used in memes, commercials, school projects, and even political campaigns. It shows up in places where even his deeper, more personal songs rarely reach. It's like this thing that just won't quit, not because it's timeless, but because it's endlessly adaptable. New verses, new headlines, same fire. And that's the irony, isn't it? The song that was supposed to be a tongue-in-cheek history sprint, a sort of playful, list-based vent from a guy trying to prove a point, has now become, for a lot of people, an anthem, a message, a cultural marker. It was meant to say, hey, we didn't start this mess, but over time, it started to feel like a song about owning the mess anyway. That twist didn't sit quite right with Billy, because the whole point of the song was to show that chaos is nothing new, that every generation inherits the flames from the one before it. And yet somehow it got flipped. It became this weird symbol of responsibility, like a rallying cry for young people trying to make sense of the world. And while that's not a bad thing, it definitely wasn't what he had in mind. He once admitted in an interview he's glad people connect to it, that he just doesn't want to play it every night. That statement says everything. There's a strange kind of pride in it, the kind that sneaks up on you, mixed with a fatigue you can't quite explain. It's like watching your child become incredibly famous in the wrong career. You love them. You're proud in your own way. But deep down, it's not the path you would have chosen. And maybe that's the real contradiction at the heart of this whole story. Billy Joel doesn't hate We Didn't Start the Fire because it flopped. It didn't. He doesn't hate it because it failed to say something. It said plenty. What weighs on him is that the song became bigger than his intention, louder than his voice, and somehow more permanent than the pieces of himself he worked hardest on. Still, the fire burns in classrooms, on TikTok, in cover versions and comedy skits and listicles on the internet. It's a song that refuses to be forgotten, and whether he likes it or not, it's become part of his legacy. Maybe that's what happens when a song leaves your hands too soon and keeps walking without you. Looking back on his catalog, Billy Joel knows he's got more than enough songs to be proud of. He's written ballads that have made people cry, anthems that have lifted spirits, and melodies that still make strangers sing along in bars and stadiums all over the world. And yet, somehow, the song that keeps showing up, the one that keeps following him like a shadow on a sunny day, is We Didn't Start the Fire. JFK, blown away. What else do I have to say? When an artist pours themselves into their work, when they spend years building a body of songs that reflect their thoughts, their doubts, their relationships, and their worldview, it's hard not to feel disappointed when one of the least personal ones ends up standing in front of all the rest. And Billy's not the only one who knows that feeling. Take Radiohead, for example. Their song Creep became an international sensation, but the band quickly grew to resent it. They stopped performing it for years. Tom York said it felt like a joke they didn't want to keep telling. Or look at Alanis Morissette and Ironic. It was her biggest hit, but also the one that got picked apart by critics and grammar sticklers alike. She later admitted she didn't love how misunderstood it became. These stories aren't about failure. They're about misalignment, and how the public often falls in love with something that the artist sees as a side note. And once that happens, it's hard to shift the spotlight back where you want it. And maybe that's the real lesson buried underneath the regret. It's not that "We Didn't Start the Fire" wasn't successful. It's not that it wasn't clever. It's that it stuck in a way that outpaced everything else. And when something sticks that hard, that fast, and that long, it tends to flatten the rest of the picture. Billy's regret, in this case, isn't about wishing something had never happened. It's about wishing something else had been seen just as clearly. It's about feeling misunderstood, not forgotten. Because he never stopped writing great songs. But somehow, one of his least personal ones got the final word, or at least the loudest.
Perhaps a bottle of rosé instead.
And the fire? It was real. It lit up the charts, the classrooms, the stadiums. But like any fire left unchecked, it burned hotter than anyone expected, and maybe it burned too long. Long enough that the smoke started to blur the view behind it. For Billy Joel, that's the thing that stings the most. Not the heat nor the fame, but the fact that for some people, "We didn't start the fire" is where the story starts, and where it ends. When all is said and done, "We Didn't Start the Fire" leaves behind a strange but very real lesson, not just about Billy Joel, but about the nature of fame itself. Because sometimes the thing that catches fire isn't your best work. It's not your proudest moment. It's not the piece of you that kept you up at night, rewriting the lyrics and shaping every chord. Sometimes the world grabs hold of something you tossed off in a weekend, and it runs with it like it's the crown jewel of your entire career. Not every hit is a home run. Some are just lucky foul balls. They land in the crowd by accident, and suddenly everyone's cheering like you planned it that way. And as the artist, all you can do is smile and wave, even if you're wondering how that one got so much attention when the songs you really loved didn't even get played twice. That's the part most people don't see. When you become famous, you don't just create art. You start carrying around a reputation, a label, a shortcut version of who you are. And over time, that version gets louder than the real thing. Billy Joel didn't set out to become the guy who recited history headlines over a drumbeat. He wanted to tell stories. He wanted to be vulnerable. He wanted to write songs that made people feel something real, not just remember dates. But eventually, he didn't get to choose which song stuck the hardest. None of us do. And that might be the hardest part of having a legacy. The realization that the version of you that lives on might not be the one you put your heart into the most. Still, maybe there's a lesson there too. Maybe it's not about regret. Maybe it's about letting go. About knowing that once you put something into the world, it doesn't really belong to you anymore. It belongs to the people who hear it, who carry it, who turn it into something else. Billy Joel may not have wanted to be a history teacher, but he wanted to be heard. And whether he likes it or not, he was. "We Didn't Start the Fire" was never supposed to be a cultural milestone. It wasn't supposed to be studied, quoted, reworked, or carried from generation to generation. It was a fast idea, born from a sarcastic conversation, written in a rush, and somehow it became one of the biggest songs Billy Joel ever released. Billy Joel didn't hate the fire. He just didn't expect it to burn so long. So here's the question. Have you ever heard of the term accidental legacy? What's yours? Kindly share with us in the comments below. Don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you found this video interesting.